This podcast is being recorded on Kaurna land. We honour and celebrate the strong cultural traditions of motherhood, family and connection to country.
How Motherhood Changed Me is brought to you by Harrison Macmillan, Australia's leading recruitment firm run by women who live by values that make their mothers proud.
No woman can say motherhood hasn't changed her, but every mother's story is different.
I don't know why I had all these miscarriages and what was causing them. And there's a part of me now that it's probably been a few years since the last D&C that I was like, I can't go through this again because the stress of being pregnant and having that in the back of your mind of having 4 miscarriages, I was like, that just is not something that I can actually handle.
This is How Motherhood Changed Me. Hello, I am Kerrie Turner.
And I'm Jenna Yates. Today we are chatting with one of your really dear friends, Kez.
We are.
And it's a story that has many ups and downs. You obviously have heard about it already, but I'm going to be honest, it's one of those topics that I haven't really thought too much about, and I suppose that's part of the whole issue unless you are dealing with it yourself.
Yeah, or know someone going through it.
Exactly. So we are really excited to talk about this topic today because I think it actually is something that it affects more women than what we might realise.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Chloe Jeffers, thank you
Hello.
for joining us. Hey, Chloe.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. I wish that I could be there in the studio to cuddle you both.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, coming to you from Melbourne, and it's wonderful to be here.
Yay. Yeah, so Chloe and I worked together in Melbourne many moons ago, well before there were husbands or children on the radar. So, yes, we go back a fair way.
Yeah, I still remember, I think when we met our respective husbands was when Kez and I were in the thick of it and knowing that moment of, hey, we think we might have met the person.
Yeah.
And I still remember those conversations really clearly. And now here we are. Our children are not that different in age. Usually Kerrie's got 2 and I've got 1. And the friendship has sustained the distance.
It
because
absolutely has.
Kez and I are those people that you just pick up where we left off.
It's because you hold all the naughty secrets. You have to keep each other close. Otherwise...
Oh, what have you been telling her?
She's clearly picked that up very quickly.
No, I know this one well. I've seen the photos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chloe, as you know, we ask a question before we jump into our chats. Could you give us one word to describe the woman that you were before you became a mum?
Oh, just one?
Just one, and I cannot wait to see what you come up with.
Free-spirited. I think free-spirited. I was absolutely a person who believed that no is not an answer. I did what I wanted. I followed my heart, and I still do to this day, but I feel like I'm a bit more measured and a bit more, I'm going to use the word calm. It's not a word that's very often associated with me, but I think compared to back then, before parenthood and motherhood, I just didn't let anything stop me.
Yep.
And I still try to take that into parenthood and try to make that my motto, really, to still remain that free-spirited, passionate, energetic person with that drive and tenacity just to do what you want and then pass that on to Hamish.
Yeah,
because
I was going to ask, do you see that in your son? Do you see that free spirit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He is absolutely a free spirit. He's hard to handle. He's neurodivergent and just such a bundle of energy. His teachers love him for it. I just try to encourage him to think big and really accept that he can be anything he wants to be and do anything he wants to do. Yeah. So hopefully I can pass that on to the next generation.
I'm sure you can. If anyone can, you can. Now, Chloe, life before babies, you touched on it. It was full of adventure for you, carefree. You made the most of absolutely every opportunity that came your way. Let's go back to that night you met Matt and the romance that followed.
Yes, he was a bartender, the old-fashioned way of meeting someone in a bar, but he was a bartender and he had a T-shirt that said, "I'm not alcoholic, I'm Australian." And he also had another T-shirt that said, "Bogan." And we went to Holly Ava in Richmond quite a lot because that was the bar on Swan Street that was the place to go on a Saturday night. And I was very flirty with him. And I was like, I wasn't looking for anything serious because, I'd had a string of people who'd kind of been time wasters, to be honest. And I was like, you know what? I'm independent. I don't need anyone. I was hosting a stage at the St Kilda Festival the next day when we swapped phone numbers. Working at Nova 100 at the time in the street team, kind of on the edge of this amazing career and really pursuing my passion for being in broadcasting. And a guy by the name of Reuben Kay, the Reuben Kay, the incredible comedian now, was working in the bar with Matt, overheard me talking to a friend saying, I want his number. And he goes, oh, do you want to give his number to me? And I said, no, I want him to give me his number. So Matt, who was so oblivious to my flirting, shuffled over with a piece of paper and said, Ruben's told me I need to give you my number. I said, yes, I'd like your number. So we swapped numbers. We said, we'll come meet next day at St Kilda Festival. And then the rest is history. We had a little kiss through the fence. I was on one side behind the fence of the backstage area.
Oh.
He was a patron, like trying to get in, and I couldn't get him in backstage because I'm like, this is some bartender who's probably looking for free beers. And then we had just this amazing night watching this Cat Empire sing. We went home that night and he dropped me at the door and I was like, oh, okay. And he goes, let's go out on Wednesday night. I'm like, okay, let's do that. And Wednesday night was Valentine's Day. And then that was a 7 or 8 hour date. And then like instantly we were together 6 or 7 days a week and it just formed into this amazing relationship really quickly. And that was 17 and a half years ago. So It's been a long time.
Yeah.
You mentioned your son, Hamish, Chloe. So he was born in August 2016.
Correct.
Tell us about entering motherhood and what the experience was like for you.
Well, it kind of, I need to go back to when I was 23 because I had polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis. And at 23, 2 weeks before I met Matt, actually, I had a male gynecologist go, well, you won't have kids. And it was very matter of fact. And I was like, what?
Yes.
And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, there's no chance you'll have kids naturally. Just cast it out of your mind. And I remember going home and crying to my mum and being like, what does this mean? And then meeting Matt 2 weeks later, I'm like, how do I bring that conversation up? Like with someone that I've just met going, oh, hang on. So then we brought it up when the time was right. I said it might not be an option for us. And he's like, that's fine. We'll deal with it when we get to it. And it was actually, we traveled the world. We lived overseas in the Caribbean. We had this great adventurous life. We got married. And then we started to think about it. I was 30 and I was like, okay, well, if it happens, it happens. We'll take any protection off the table. My grandparents both died within a month of each other. And that was in August 2015. So my nan, who'd raised me with my mum, who was a single mother, had raised me with her. She passed away, which was really awful. And then a month later, my granddad passed away, even though they'd been separated. Like he literally just died of a broken heart from losing my nan. And I was like, I can't go through trying to be having fertility issues when I've got all that going on. Yeah. So just throw caution to the wind. Fast forward to December 2015, my birthday, and a weekend of 2 weddings. And there was a lot of love around because, lo and behold, the first weekend without protection, Hamish came into the world. And I found out 2 days before Christmas Eve. And I went, okay, I guess we're having a baby. And I had the most wonderful pregnancy. Like, I loved being pregnant so much. I didn't have morning sickness. I loved my bump. I got skinny because this child was taking everything. All I ate was cheesy mite scrolls and vanilla milkshakes for 9 months. And then I had a really difficult labour. I had to be induced. I had reduced fetal movement. I had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. And I pushed with the Royal Women's to say, this doesn't feel right. You need to get this baby out of me. I was in labour for 2 days. Yep. I was having back-to-back 10-minute long contractions with a 1-minute break.
10 minutes.
To the point where they gave me morphine because they were worried how much pain I was in. And then they checked and I was 4 centimeters dilated. And they're like, you're not even in there. What it turned out, he was posterior, and he was stuck. In the end, I had forceps ventouse. He had like bruising, like so bad on the back of his head, a subgaleal hematoma, I learned, and he had to go into the NICU ward briefly. But then I almost passed away during labor. I had a thing called hypernatremia. So for 48 hours, all I'd done was pretty much drink water.
Yeah.
I basically had flooded my system. And so I was losing like 800 milliliters of urine like every half an hour. So my body was basically extracting all the water. And I had all these random things. Like I remember really clearly saying to my mum, who stuck with me, she stayed in the room while Matt went away with Hamish. I said to Mum, can you say goodbye to Matt and Hamish for me? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I just need you to say goodbye.
Oh, gosh.
And she was like, what's going on? And the doctors are like, well, she's very quiet. Is this what she's like? She's like, no. Anyway, they looked at my bag and realized that I was getting rid of all this liquid, stopped all the liquids, and I came back. But like my internal organs were shutting down. And it was a really interesting time because it was actually really peaceful. I was just like, okay, I got to go. And I was like, what? Then I had really bad postnatal anxiety after that, which was very challenging to deal with. But as someone who's been very proactive with my mental health challenges in my life, I was 9 days post-labor, I was at the doctor's getting a referral to a psychologist. They nearly put me in the mother and child ward just because I had a really bad like catastrophizing. And that went on for about 6 months probably, where I just was so worried. But like I think maybe Hamish was 3 or 4 weeks old, and I was sitting in our apartment, which overlooked Punt Road and the Yarra River, and all of these ambulances was flying up Punt Road, like one after the other, and it was a highly windy day. And I was like, oh, look, this is feeding my catastrophizing. Something like there's been something going on, like the world is ending. It turned out it was the thunderstorm asthma incident.
Oh, I remember that.
Where 9 people had died in Victoria.
Yes.
And that was all the ambulances flying up Punt Road to get to the Alfred.
Yeah.
So it was actually substantiated that something significant was happening. So I went through all of that and it was full on, like so full on. But then I've had after that, like, you know, the ups and downs of motherhood, but I'm medicated and I'm pretty well balanced now, and I love being a mum, but I also love being Chloe.
Yeah.
And some people can't grapple with that when I work full time, and you get, you know, shade from mums at schools.
Always.
Like I literally always.
Really?
I literally had a mother say to me, "Oh, it's been so long since I've seen you at school pickup. I thought maybe you and Matt had separated."
Passive aggressive. That's so unnecessary.
Okay.
Like, what?
I'm just listening to this story for the first time though, so I have to pause for a second because literally, I don't know, 3 or 4 times in that story I'm going, what? What?
Yeah. There's a few things to unpack.
And time has passed, so, and as you say, you've got help and you've got your support, but that's so traumatic from the very beginning, being told you'll never have kids. How many times do we need to talk about this before people will understand to approach this stuff with sensitivity? You know, you're a 23-year-old with the world at your feet. Don't tell her so flippantly that she'll never be a mum. And
at 23, for most people, it's probably not on the radar at that
Exactly.
age. But you don't also need that lumped on you, just sitting there at the back of your head, eating away
at you.
No,
And
not fair.
I don't know. We've had the most interesting season, Chloe, with all of these things that have come, and it's been like, oh, of course that was meant to happen
for a
you.
reason.
And we've said it so many times, but this baby found a way to get to you, and how beautiful is that?
How old was Hamish when you and Matt started thinking about maybe adding to the family?
He would have been 4. I think 3 or 4. Originally, so the plan originally when we'd had him, I'd always said I want to have 2 babies really quickly. Like let's just rip the Band-Aid off, get it over. I know it'll be troublesome. And I said that to my psychologist at the time, and she said, please promise me you will not try to have a baby for at least a year, because your mental state, your hormones, you are fragmented. You need to rebuild um, because you are on the precipice of being admitted to hospital for mental health challenges. You need to be kind to yourself, and adding the hormones and all the complications of adding another baby into the mix, don't do it. So that happened. So then I went back to work at 9 months. My career kind of did what it needed to do. I had some great opportunities. Then I got a really great job working in a fantastic business. Um, and then I started to think about having a child. And Matt and I were like, okay, well, Hamish is, he's a bit older, but we've got to get on to this because I was probably 36 at the time. Um, and thought, okay, well, it happened once. Let's go again. And the first weekend again that we tried, I got my IUD out, we fell pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, this has happened so quickly. Like, again, like, screw you, doctor, when I was 23.
That's it. And
like,
the PCOS and the endometriosis and
all those stories. And I had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. And I was talking to the doctor on the phone. I actually called the nurses on call line and said, I don't feel pregnant anymore. And I'd been to my GP and I'd had like the 6-week test and yep, cool, you've got it. And we don't need to do a dating scan or anything. We'll get you to the 13-week mark and then we'll do the scan. I was like, great, great. And I remember feeling just I don't have a lot of symptoms when I'm pregnant, other than really tired, like ridiculously tired. I remember my friend Monica had actually said to me when I was pregnant, I hadn't realized I was pregnant. She goes, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so run down and tired. And I'm feeling, I had a cold. And she's like, are you pregnant? I was like, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was. Good on you, Monica. And yeah, then I just like had this feeling. I was like, I don't feel pregnant anymore. And I remember going out for dinner with my girlfriends and they're like, yay, touching my belly. And I was 10 weeks. And I was just like, yeah, something's not right.
Yeah. Mother's intuition.
Nothing had happened. Totally. And I went, I had a tiny spot of blood. I was about 11 and a half weeks based on the numbers. Tiny, tiny spot of blood. And I said to Matt, I want to go to the Mercy because I just need to know that this baby is okay.
Is that a hospital?
Yes.
At the hospital, yeah. So it's the Women's Hospital in Heidelberg in Melbourne. They did a test. They did a blood test. And for whatever reason, it was like an 11-hour wait. We just sat there all day. And they did the blood test and my HCG levels were around 14,000. They're like, well, that kind of adds up to if you're at the end of the first trimester, they should be dropping. I was like, great. Then they were like, we'll just do a scan just to check. And they did the scan. And I remember the woman going, have you been to the bathroom? I said, yeah, no. She goes, can you go to the bathroom and come back? She did the scan. And I remember her going, I'm so sorry. There's no baby there. It looks like the embryo has stopped growing at about 5 or 6 weeks. And I was like, what do you mean? Like I'm 11 weeks pregnant and I've got all these symptoms. And she said, we'll give it a week and you can come back in, but it's a phantom. It's a missed miscarriage where your body still thinks you're pregnant and it's still creating hormones, but the babies have stopped growing. That was not what I was expecting. Like my mum was at our house looking after Hamish thinking, we were going away for the weekend, I think, from memory. And I'm going, what do you mean? I had found out, I think I was having a dry Christmas. I remember that. And this was, I had a dry Christmas and then I went in to January, was having a great time telling everyone. I was like, I'm 10 weeks pregnant. We told our family on Christmas Day because like, we want to be part of this, even though we're early. And then had to retract it. And I had to have a D&C because they're like, we don't know what the chance is of you like having complications if we give you the tablets to get rid of the baby. And I was like, okay. So that was really tough. Like I just didn't expect that at all. And then we're like, right, we'll get back on the horse. So that was the end of January. by April that next, like 4 months later, I had fallen pregnant again. And I don't know whether it was the COVID injection, my vaccination, or just whatever it was. I felt pregnant because I have really, that's the one thing I have is a really strong sense of smell when I fall pregnant. I remember being like, okay, I think I'm pregnant. Did a test, was pregnant. Then I didn't feel pregnant. Then I had bleeding, did a test, wasn't pregnant anymore. And I remember going to brunch with a friend going, I think I've just had a miscarriage. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I think I have. Did another test a few days later, wasn't pregnant anymore. So went, okay, cool. This is happening. Then waited a few more months. Hamish has a birthday party in August. I'm not feeling great at the party. Fell pregnant again. Didn't realize. I was like, oh my God. And then was like, surely this is the third time. Like, surely this is fine. It wasn't. I had another bleed. And then I found out I was pregnant again. And they have a early pregnancy clinic where if you've had like a couple of miscarriages, they put you in for a scan. And they did a scan at, I think it was 6 weeks. And they're like, oh, you've got twins. And I was like, oh. They're like, but there's some points that are missing. So we're going to make you come in next week. Came back in the next week. They did a scan and the eggs had split into being triplets. But they were like, there's no growth. It's actually you're having another missed
miscarriage.
Yeah. And I had to go and have another E&C, another clean out back in the same hospital again under another, bit of energy, when you're going under and you're like, okay, is this good for me? They're like, well, we just got to clean you out. And so that happened. And they're like, we don't understand, but they tested the cells. So by then I'm now a great scientific example for them. And they go, can we test the cells? I'm like, well, I'd love to know why I've had four miscarriages because what's happening? I'm not, like, I don't go out partying. Like, I live a fairly healthy lifestyle. I'm not morbidly obese. What is going on? Like, I can get pregnant when my husband looks at me, like so easily pregnant. And they did the tests and they're like, all the cells were fine. So to this day, I don't know why I had all these miscarriages and what was causing them. And there's a part of me now that it's probably been a few years since the last D&C that I was like, I can't go through this again because the stress of being pregnant and having that in the back of your mind of having four miscarriages, I was like, that just is not something that I can actually handle. And to be fair, Matt was really understanding. He's like, you want this other baby now. I'm okay if we just have Hamish. Can you I had this like, I don't know, like a love that I needed to fulfill. So we got another dog and I was like, I've got to do something. I've got to channel it into something. And I've taken up hobbies like singing and it's really taken me a long time to reconcile it. And I think
understandably though, that's a lot emotionally. It's a lot for Matt to get his head around, but you're living it, Chloe. It's your body.
Yeah. I'm really good at suppressing, I've worked out.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. And I think like there was part of me that was so mad for so long. And I was mad that this stupid doctor when I was 23 was right. Like he probably his intention, his way of handling the information was incorrect, but his intent was correct. And there are so many women I know that go through infertility with PCOS and endometriosis, but secondary infertility is really challenging and women don't talk about it enough. And there's a few people that have started talking about it in the media that the challenge I have with it is that I guess the coaching isn't there at that surface level of GPs. Like I think back when I went to the GP and said, I've had a miscarriage. I don't feel pregnant anymore. And she she kind of was like, you're fine. And I called the nurses on call line and said, I don't feel pregnant anymore. And none of them said, go to the emergency room and get a scan. They went, you're probably just over exaggerating,
Oh,
or you're just lucky you've got no symptoms. Like,
Mm,
just wait till you scan.
mm,
They'll think you're trying to get a free scan. Like, I'm like, what?
yeah.
And I just go, that is not the conversation. Like, I had that feeling with the second pregnancy. So with the twins, it was maybe 9 or 10 weeks before I discovered that I wasn't pregnant anymore.
mm.
And I'd gone back, and at the 6 week mark, when something felt a bit off, and I kind of was like, oh, surely it can't happen again.
Mm.
And that's what the doctor said. They're like, surely not. You're fine. Just wait
Mm.
till we get you into the clinic. Whereas that was another 4 weeks of me having that what if scenarios.
Yeah.
Like, I remember discussing with Matt, he's got a Mitsubishi. Try it, and I'm like, can we fit 3 baby seats in that car? Like, we got twins. Like, whoa. Like,
Yeah.
that's life-changing, twins.
Mm.
And there was just there's a knowledge gap that's
Yeah.
missing, I think, which I'm very open about it. And I guess I try to not make it feel so heavy.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it's my job to normalize the conversation around secondary infertility and repeated loss.
Yeah.
Because it can feel so dark. Like, you're just like, why is my body failing me? And there's no answers.
Yeah.
And
Like,
this conversation will help people
So many
understand. I mean,
people.
I said in the intro, it's something that I haven't ever really thought about. And I'll be honest, Chloe, without even knowing anything about your story, Kerrie hadn't told me the ins and outs of it. But for me, I guess I thought secondary infertility would be just trying and nothing happening. I didn't realize that there could be loss in there.
Yeah.
I guess if that makes any sense. And,
yeah.
you know, just recently, Bindi Owen, our beloved Bindi Owen, did a Q&A on YouTube. She must be peppered all the time with these questions from people about when are you having another baby? And, you know, really quite emotionally addressing the camera saying, please don't ask me that. Like, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And, you know, that it's hurtful. And it's like that sensitivity thing, and a reminder to all of us that you just can't ask.
There are certain questions that don't need to be asked. Yeah.
Because you
How
don't know
have
what's
you
going.
managed it, Chloe? I'm sure people have, oh, Hamish is 3
Oh.
now. Hamish is 4 now. When are you having another baby?
Yeah.
How have you and Matt handled it?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes I throw it back at someone, like, oh, no other kids, just the one. Like, that's a really common thing I get. Just one kid? It's like it, and I'm like, yeah, well, actually, I've been pregnant 6 times in my life, but I've only got the one this side. And they just go, oh,
Don't know what to say.
oh, yeah, okay. Or I'll say, yeah, we tried and it didn't work out. So we're lucky we've got one. And I try to use that tone of we're grateful and lucky we've got one, because I've got so many girlfriends who don't have one.
Yeah.
And I'm so, honestly, like, I was meant to be a mum. It was in my waters. It was in my plan. Hamish was meant for me and Matt. And I feel I've got a friend who's gone through, round after round of, treatments and every different way you can try to get pregnant and it's not working, and she's doing it on her own. But then I've got, and I know, Kerrie, obviously you had challenges in your process to get your beautiful babies. And then, there's a guy I used to work with, 17 rounds of IVF and they've got no baby. And they've done, implantation, they're doing surrogacy, and it just isn't working. So I'm so grateful, and I really try to build that narrative. I'm lucky I've only got one. If someone goes, oh, just one, I'm like, yeah, I'm so lucky, hey. And they're like, oh,
We all know that it takes a village to raise a child, and our friends at Harrison Macmillan know that it also takes a team to build a successful business.
And they're here to help you find the right team members.
Mums understand the value of asking for help, and businesses should too.
Harrison Macmillan specialises in recruiting top talent, so you don't have to go it alone. They have the experience and network to ensure you get the best candidates.
With over 500 clients across Australia, they are well known for their people-centric expertise.
They don't see themselves as just a recruitment agency, but as your strategic talent partner committed to meeting your unique staffing challenges.
And outsourcing to them means you can focus on what you do best.
Visit harrisonmacmillan.com.au to learn more about how they can support your business, just like a village supports a family.
It's funny because we had whooping cough go through Victoria recently, and it all went through Hamish to school and he had it. And the doctor's advice was keep Hamish home from school. Now, I know that whooping cough is incredibly risky for pregnant people. So I said to my work, I'm going to work from home for the week. I don't know anyone at the office that's pregnant, but it's also not on them to tell me until they're ready.
Yeah,
so I worked from home because I didn't want to risk bringing whooping cough into the office until my antibiotics were done, on the chance that someone in the office was pregnant. Now, I kicked myself because in my head I went, we've got a couple of women who've recently been married, so maybe they're on their journeys. And then I was like, why do you assume that just because they're married? Like, we've got single women in the office. We've got men, like, they all could be, you don't know people's situations. And I think that our generation and the generation following us are better at it. I find it's the older generation who they don't understand when you say to them, I don't want children. I've got girlfriends who don't want children. And they're the ones that pipe up going, God, they're so selfish or whatever. And for some of them, they don't want children because they know it's going to be a difficult process to go through because they might be divorced or they might not have a significant other. They might not want to have that bond or they just don't feel naturally maternal. And then there's the people who go, but you deserve to give your son a brother or a sister. And it's also, to be honest, like Hamish knew that I was pregnant those times. And sometimes he'll say to me, I wish I had a brother or a sister. And I said, well, it's a good thing we've got lots of friends around us, buddy, because you get the joy of keeping all your toys to yourself and having fun with them and then knowing you've got all of our attention just to yourself. So I have, a master PR person spins their words. I am particularly stoic though. And I mean, I did laugh with Kerrie that I'm not a crier because my medication doesn't allow it. And I think it does come out in other ways. Like sometimes I'm like, I know I should feel more about it, but I've just had to I've done a lot of work in therapy to go, this happened. If I hold on to it, it will haunt me forever. So we just move on and know that that wasn't what was on the plan.
But have you let yourself grieve each time?
I have.
Because
I didn't for a while. I definitely didn't. I tried to hold it all in and then I went on a health retreat up to Eden, which is this beautiful place in Queensland, and oh God, it was so nice. It was this like a Gwingana kind of place. And
is that last year, the year before?
That was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago now.
Maybe even longer.
Wow.
Yeah, and I let it all out, and I had this woman do this chest beating therapy on me, and it brought out all these emotions, and I was like, it was good, but I just needed to get it out, and then I was like, okay, I've purged. It felt like a purge, and there are times though, I've made and we've discussed this, Kez, moving on the baby stuff.
Yeah.
In my garage is still a whole heap of baby stuff. My sister-in-law just had her third baby, and I've got friends who are having babies, and some of them are really they tiptoe around me, and I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't need to feel guilty that you're pregnant. And I know that a lot of people are really conscious of that. And I see all these wags saying, I'm pregnant, and my heart goes out to you if you've experienced infertility. I appreciate that, but sometimes it feels a bit forced. And I said to people, don't feel guilty for yourself having joy. But I did, the unpacking of all the baby stuff you thought you might use again. I've now still got a box of special baby stuff, but I'm and I'm happy that we're not having another kid now. But I'm like, who am I going to pass it on to? I hope Hamish has kids,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he might not. Who knows? But I did have a turning point, and it was we were camping last year, and there was 3 screaming babies around us in the tents, and I went, I don't
That's
want
not
that.
me. Yay.
That's not me anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was the first time, that was in January this year, that I actually, because I spent so long convincing myself that I didn't want a baby anymore.
Yeah.
And it was a lie. I just, fake it till you make it. It was like, this is going to be my undoing if I try again. I will be a shell of a human. I will spend 9 months so anxious that I don't think I actually can do that for my mental health. I can't have a 5th miscarriage. And I've got a family friend who's had 6 between kids. And I said to her, how did you get up every day?
Yeah.
And she goes, to be honest, it was the beginning of the end of our relationship. And they had a baby, and then they divorced a few years later because there was such a breakdown. So I was worried about our relationship, what my relationship with Hamish would be like. What would I be like at work? All those things. I kind of had to make my peace with it and fake it until I felt like it felt right. And it was in January at the Anglesea camping ground when I went, I'm so glad that's not my baby crying at 2 a.m. and I can roll over and go back to sleep and get up and just have fun with my now 8-year-old who is so independent.
Yeah. I'm so glad you found that place, Chloe, because I know for a lot of women, even if they haven't gone through infertility, they don't get that sense of being done, and maybe never. Maybe the partner doesn't want to, maybe financial situation, they can't continue having children. And even though you didn't reach that minute at that point, you found it and you are happy with where you are now.
Yeah, and like even talking about it, like there's still a part of me, of course, that's like, oh, but if it was to happen, like that would be a blessing. Like there's a chick I follow in the UK, Mother Pucker is her podcast, and she recently left her and her partner split up, and she repartnered, and she's 43 and she's fallen pregnant.
Wow.
And seeing her story, I was like, I wouldn't hate it, but I've closed that chapter. But I was like, there's still the 1% of me that goes, if a baby was to come, I of course would love it.
And you've got a box of stuff ready to go.
Totally.
Yeah.
But, to be honest, I'd quite like to foster maybe like a 3-year-old or something when you get through those really
hard early
the
years.
hard years. Like at least if I'm all right if they're talking back to me, telling me what they need.
That's the part that's hard for me. The talking back.
Oh God. I mean, the eye rolls, and I'm like, I'm getting eye rolls and he's 8, and I'm like, God help me when he's 14.
Oh yeah. The eye rolls, I think started. They started at about 8. I think the eye rolls started, and they've continued. She's just turned 9 and they're still rolling.
Oh my gosh. What are we going to do with these teenagers? Can we send them away to the farm together?
Off to Eden.
Yeah, totally. I know, just teach them. But yeah, it's been a really humbling journey, I think, overall, because like you can look at people's lives and go, God, they've got, they've done what they've said they wanted to do. And that's my thing. Like I'm so fiercely determined, and I go back to that free-spirited sort of person that I've always been inherently. And I very rarely miss out on what I want. Like I'm one of those people who's stubborn as an ox, and I'll just keep going until I get there. Like I remember driving past Fox FM as a kid going, I'm going to work there. And I did. And then I wanted to be a radio announcer. I'm like, I'm going to be a breakfast radio announcer. And I did it. And then I wanted to do another dream job, and I did that. And it's actually been one of those things where I've gone, you don't always get what you want, Like sometimes shit happens and you become a better person because of it, because that fierce determination gets channeled somewhere else. So whether it's putting it into my work now, whether it's putting it into, Hamish's sport or music or whatever it is that I can bring it into, that energy has to go somewhere. And that's probably the challenge that I've had with Matt, was when I kept wanting to try again. He's like, why can't you just love me and Hamish more? And I said,
Oh.
it's a different feeling. Like, I can't explain why I need to love something else. And that's why we got our dog.
Another
Like,
dog,
I was
yeah.
like, I just need something to look after. He's like, why don't you look after me and Hamish? And I'm like, I already look after you and Hamish. Like, I need something else to play with.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I need a new toy in the box.
Yeah, yeah. But I imagine that the work you've had to do on your mindset, Chloe, and your relationship with Matt, for him saying, you know, can't you just love me more? But he also supported you with wanting to try for another baby.
Yeah, it's been, I think there is definitely a part of me that feels like I went through this alone. Um, and not at his expense. And he's one of the more understanding and supportive people compared to, as my mother reminds me, in the husband lottery, she lucked out. She didn't do so well, but I did. Plus my dad. He's just not very responsible. It's fine. Uh, but there were times when I would almost be like, this is my problem to deal with, because I needed to not take on someone else's emotions. Like, I was like, I just need to manage my own emotions. And that
I can
is
appreciate
really
that.
hard. Yeah. And there has been communication breakdowns there where I haven't verbalized how I was feeling because I didn't want to be burdensome. I'm like, I'm already dealing with this shit as it is. Like, I don't need someone else dealing with it. Like, I'm big enough and ugly enough to look after it myself, and I'll just cop it. And I remember my mother-in-law saying to me, we want to be there for you, and we hadn't mentioned the 5-week miscarriages. Like, we'd only mentioned the big ones, and they sort of said, are you still thinking about having kids? And I said, actually, we're not, because I've actually had 4 miscarriages. And they were like, what do you mean? And I had assumed that maybe Matt would have talked about it with his mum, because that was a conversation they could have, and he hadn't. He hadn't really talked about it with anyone. And so I said, do you need to talk to anyone about this? Like, I've gone and sought help with my
Professional
counsellor.
help, yeah.
He's like, no, it's fine. And I was like, that's not the response I was expecting.
Yeah. Has he
It's just
since?
been,
He
No.
still hasn't? No.
no. He was like, it is what it is. I was like, and I think there was that element of it wasn't happening to
To
him.
him. I was going to
Yeah.
say that because we grow up, don't we?
Yeah.
Basically, from the get-go, here's your doll and
That's true.
mum
Yeah,
life,
start
and you know,
nurturing.
and you do grow up expecting that it's going to happen for you.
And do you think also because Matt wasn't too fussed if you had it
Yeah.
anymore, did that potentially play a part in his acceptance of it all?
I think he was very much like, just whatever happens, happens. And if
Yeah.
she wants it, then great. And like,
If it doesn't happen, it
he
doesn't-
loves
yeah.
kids, and it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. He
Yeah.
was less, not invested, it's the wrong word. I think he was definitely invested in it. But I think there was also an element that saw how challenging it was to me. And
Yeah.
it was like, he just wanted
Yeah.
me to be
Okay with
happy.
it.
And as much as
And
you didn't want to
okay.
be a burden on him, he probably
Yeah.
didn't want to verbalise what he was going through and
Totally.
lump that back on you. You were
And I
already
didn't-
dealing
to
with
be
so
honest-
much.
Yeah. And I remember seeing a TV ad. It's one of the ones where it's like where both the man and the woman stop drinking at parties because they're
Yeah.
trying, because it's kind of trying to reinforce that fertility is
It's a team effort.
related to the men and women. And I remember saying to him at one stage something about, we've got an infertility issues. And he goes, no, we don't. I'm like, we've had 4 miscarriages. And he goes, yeah, but we're not infertile. We can get pregnant. And I was like, no, infertility is the whole process.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of education, I think, in men as well that needs to happen. And a lot of men think it is like, it could have been him. It could have been like, we never tested his sperm, or we
Yes.
never tested his
Yeah.
health and things, like they tested the cells with me, but we didn't
Yeah.
pursue that because we didn't want to. And I remember years and years ago when we first got together, I said to him, look, I've been told I might not have kids. And he goes, well, I don't want to do IVF. So if it doesn't happen naturally,
It's not happening.
so be it. And I had said the same, and we've stuck with that because that's been the obvious question is, well, why don't you do IVF? And it was just something we'd both always agreed that wasn't going to be on our dad's card.
I think I'm even guilty of having asked you that before.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And like, you know what? I think if I'd wanted it badly enough, and I see this with people who, and it comes back to having Hamish. I had one, and it didn't need any intervention. So I think if we flipped it and I'd never had him, then I think it would have been a different conversation that we would have had around IVF or not IVF. And I think the beauty of that natural pregnancy coming through and having such a glorious pregnancy was just, I never not even for a second did I think about miscarriage with Hamish.
So glad.
Until those last week where I was like, oh God,
something's not right.
Something doesn't feel right. I think I might, I had a dream that he was a stillborn and that his cord was around his neck. And then when he came out, the cord was around his neck and my placenta had stopped working about 3 days earlier, they reckoned.
Yep.
So,
wow.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's a lot to unpack. I remember when I was quite unwell in the hospital, I'd originally wanted to make the placenta pills. And there's a photo
such a Chloe thing.
Yeah, there was a photo in the ward in birth center, and you can see my placenta in an ice cream bucket next to me, and it was really brown.
It just wasn't good.
It wasn't good. It had stopped getting whatever it needed. And they're like, oh, it's probably been for a few days. It hasn't been working. That's probably why.
And that coincides with about the time that you felt something wasn't right.
Yeah, that something wasn't right. Yeah, he was ninjering in me for so much, and then he was just going quiet, and I was like, no, this kid's a total psycho in my tummy. Get him out. Yeah, and the cord was around his neck and all these things. Anyway, but I remember being like, oh well, that's the only time it crossed my mind. But then the whole time, the instinct of those 4 losses was, if I get to the birth center, that will be an absolute miracle. And it was innate in me that I knew that there was it just didn't feel right. So,
well, that very first pregnancy, Chloe, I remember you were in Adelaide for a weekend.
Yes. And I had to tell you, and you were like, oh my God, why are you not drinking?
And but then also when you told me, I said, I knew it. I knew you were pregnant. But I feel like even that was very insensitive for me to say at the time. Because you weren't drinking, none of my business. Perhaps it's just because we're so close that I felt I could pry a little bit more. And then when you told me you were pregnant, I knew it. I knew there was something up.
We've all done that, Kez.
But and then that was the beginning of 12 months probably for you of devastation.
Yeah, it was actually. I remember being on that rooftop.
Yes,
wonderful at the
pool.
Casino.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep. No, but I'm an oversharer, and I think it's similar to, and I'm grateful that I was, because I think that's the other big thing that's come out of this was sharing the burden of grief.
It's not just for you to process on your own.
No, and so many women go, I've had, this many miscarriages, or I've been going through this for 3 years, or whatever's, they haven't talked about it. And I just say, even if it's just to one friend, that's what our friendship groups are for, is to share the highs and lows of life. It's not all, the wonderful Instagram posts of how everything is. And it is absolutely sharing that journey together. And that's why we told our families on Christmas 2 years in a row. I was pregnant, and it was like, oh my God, now 2 years in a row we've had to say we're not pregnant. And they were all really sad for us too, because they were expecting another cousin in the family. And this stigma around waiting to 13 weeks, and it's everyone's choice. I get it. People don't want to share it. But, if you're not yourself and you're feeling crap and you're having a horrible first trimester and you're trying to keep it a secret, don't. Just tell someone, tell your boss.
Yeah, just let someone know.
Just let someone know why you're not yourself. Because I remember so clearly when I was pregnant with Hamish, I'd been working at the place I'd been working for maybe 6 or 7 months. I'd left radio to want to start a family because, as we know, radio does not pay very well. Looking at you, SCA board. And it wasn't realistic to have a baby on a radio wage. Um, and I wasn't on my game at work because I was exhausted and I was working at the Australian Open doing like 14-hour days and I was 9 weeks pregnant. Now, fortunately, I wasn't that unwell other than being so tired that I used to sneak off to the toilets at the Australian Open and sleep on them for 20 minutes.
Power nap.
Literally in the portaloos at the Australian Open, having a little cheeky 10-minute nap. And I remember going into my boss at the time and telling her why I was not feeling great and I was 13 weeks pregnant. She goes, "Oh, well, that explains a few things." And I was like,
Wow, supportive.
yeah. Funnily enough, she does not have any children, didn't have a maternal instinct in her body. So there wasn't a lot of empathy there.
Yeah.
But, I just sharing this story, I try to tell it as often as I can to say that this is normal.
Yeah.
That, husband, wife, 2 kids, dog, backyard, that's not normal anymore. It's great that it happens for you. I know, obviously, Bow and Pipes, you've got your little family unit there, and but that didn't come without its challenges.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, like, the more that we can try and have these conversations, just to know that there is someone else that's probably got a very similar story to me, that's had that secondary, infertility and lots of miscarriages.
Yeah. Well, Chloe, I don't know how much you've looked into the figures, but I did some research because that's just who I am. More than 1 in 10 women will experience secondary infertility. That's a lot.
And it's shocking, really. It's surprising to hear that figure.
I think it was 1 in 6 couples will experience infertility, more than 1 in 10 women, secondary infertility. That is so much more prevalent than people realise.
Yeah,
it's a lot of people.
And and I know it's not just the second baby as well. Like it's however big you expected your family to be. It might be your 5th child is when you don't have the baby. I even spoke to my son's teacher this morning. She was saying, it's so nice when all the babies. They're all excited today. They were going off to swimming. And I'm like, you still get excited about little kids in their little outfits? She's like, yeah, mate, you're a primary school teacher. She goes, yeah, but my babies are 21, 19 and 15. And she goes, I always wanted a 4th. And I didn't ask anything further on that because I'm like, it's not my place to have that conversation with her as she's about to take on 23 8-year-olds for the day. But
they all deserve medals, those teachers.
Yeah, they absolutely do. They were all going to swimming. They were all losing their minds. They were trying to flush each other because they all have their bathers underneath their uniforms. But in my head, I went through, I was like, she's just said to me she wanted a 4th. Who knows what her story is?
Yeah, correct.
It could have been her husband didn't want it. It could have been it didn't work out. Who knows? It could have been a financial decision. But there is endless, I think nearly every woman or couple, male couple that wants children, I've got a same-sex couple, 2 men, they don't know anyone that wants to have a baby for them. So they're just never going to be parents. It's the one thing they long for.
Yeah.
So it's the more that we can push the conversation, the better, really.
I totally
and
agree.
if I can have that opportunity to be an advocate for it, and whether it's through the story of endometriosis or PCOS or just because my body it didn't work out, then so be it.
But what a person to have as an advocate. She
doesn't shut up about it.
No. Here we go again. Chloe's on her rant again.
Yeah. I'm on a rant. I'm on my high horse again. Yeah.
No, I've learnt so much today. It's been a really eye-opening chat with you today because there's so many things and there's so many twists and turns that I didn't even know happened. And I know that sounds really ignorant, but it just wasn't part of my story, I suppose. And it's not like there's anyone there with a information booklet telling you, is there? And maybe there should be. So,
and there was also a reason why I didn't fill you in on all of the details going into today's chat, because it's Chloe's story to tell. And I wanted her to be the one that told you so that you could hear it from her, not from me first.
Yeah.
And then,
it was a really lovely chat, Chloe. And I think that lots of people listening are going to perhaps change the way they handle this sensitive topic, because as Bindi Owen said, you don't know what's going on
Yeah.
behind closed doors.
It's not your business.
No, and that's the thing is just it's always I love that like News Corp have a rule where they don't ask people if they're expecting children, assuming that people are going to. Like I love that magazines are getting better at that and they're not speculating about pregnancies and what people are
Baby
doing because it's
bumps
just
and-
not fair.
Yeah.
Just
It's
be kind.
It's not your business.
Just
be
be kind. Yeah.
But it's because of conversations like this. So thank you. Thank you for being that advocate and sharing your story with us today. It's been so great.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and as I said, if one woman or man listens to this and resonates, and maybe they go and seek, some counselling and some support because maybe they haven't dealt with it, or they go, oh, hang on, maybe I should try again. Like, if I'd had someone in my corner going, just go again, I might have, but at the time I also had people in the corner going, it's okay if you don't want to go again. And I was like, yep. I'm just gonna hang out and cuddle other people's babies,
Needed
like
to
my
hear
beautiful
that.
niece.
Yeah. Now, Chloe, before we let you go, free-spirited was the word you gave us, which I think sums you up perfectly before you were a mum. Can you give us one word to describe the woman you are now that you are a mum?
Oh, relaxed. I'm a relaxed parent. I don't like binding rules. I feel like we need to remember that our children are humans as well. And I give myself permission to be a relaxed parent. And there are days when I don't want to be a parent, and that's okay. And I have the most incredible support network around me. One of my girls at work, actually, she's about 25, and she said to me the other day, you're always out and about, like your job's busy. Why'd you have a kid? If you, yeah, I was like,
Spoken like a real 25-year-old.
Totally. And I said, just because you have kids doesn't mean that you stop living.
Yeah.
And
Don't
she was
put your
like,
life on hold.
Yeah. And my mum always used to say, because she just had me, she goes, one baby's an accessory. It's like a really cool handbag. If you goes, anything after that, it's weighing you down, but one baby's an accessory. So
On your bev.
the adventures that I get to have, thanks, Mum. I feel more relaxed. I feel like you just got to go with the flow. If anything, parenthood teaches you that you can't plan everything, so you've just got to relax into it.
Yeah.
How lucky is Hamish?
So lucky. Yeah.
Too lucky, to be honest. He asks for what he wants and he gets it, which is so annoying because I'm like, I came from a very low socioeconomic background. And he goes, Mum, I want a new game on my Switch. I'm like, come on then, let's go. I'm like, because I want to give him everything that I didn't have as a kid. And I'm like, I've got to stop doing that because this kid is literally wants for nothing. Little shit.
Only child prerogative, so I say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He gets what he wants. And I'm like, it's okay. And they're like, you shouldn't spoil him. I'm like, why not? Why not?
Yeah, just do
Spoil
it.
him. Spoil him. Do it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on How Motherhood Changed Me. We'd love you to be part of the conversation by connecting with us on social media. And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review and subscribe.